What is the soul? Is it a thing trapped inside the body or the very life of the body itself? This question launched 2,000 years of debate, and Aristotle's answer remains the most provocative ever given. De Anima on the soul is Aristotle's systematic investigation into the nature of living things. Written in the 4th century before Christ, it is not a religious text about the afterlife. It is the first work of psychology in the literal sense, the study of the psyche, the soul, understood as the principle that makes living things alive. For Aristotle, everything from plants to humans has a soul, and understanding the soul means understanding life itself. Aristotle begins by surveying his predecessors. The early philosophers identified the soul with various elements: air, fire, water, blood. Democritus made it atoms. Plato most influentially argued in the Phaedo that the soul is an immaterial substance entirely separate from the body, imprisoned in flesh, longing for release. Aristotle rejects all of these. The soul is not an element, not atoms, and not a prisoner in a cage. These theories all make the same error. They treat the soul as one thing among others, rather than as the organizing principle of a living body. Aristotle's definition is revolutionary. The soul is the first actuality of a natural body that is potentially alive. Just as sight is the actuality of the eye, the soul is the actuality of the whole living body. Consider an axe. If an axe were a natural body, its soul would be cutting, the activity that makes it what it is. If the eye were an animal, sight would be its soul. The soul is not a thing inside the body. It is the body's being alive. It is what the body does, not something the body contains. This is hylomorphism, the doctrine that every substance is a composite of form, morph, and matter. The body is the matter, the soul is the form. They are not two separate things joined together. They are two aspects of one living being. You cannot separate the soul from the body any more than you can separate the shape of a wax seal from the wax itself. This means asking whether soul and body are one is like asking whether the wax and its shape are one. The question does not arise. Not all souls are equal. Aristotle identifies 3 levels, nested like concentric circles. The nutritive soul, possessed by all living things, including plants, governs growth, nutrition, and reproduction. The sensitive soul, possessed by animals, adds sensation, desire, and locomotion. The rational soul, possessed by humans alone, adds thought and deliberation. Each higher level includes all the capacities of the lower. Humans have nutritive and sensitive souls in addition to their rational soul. We are animals before we are thinkers. The most basic function of soul is nutrition, the capacity to take in matter from the environment and transform it into the substance of the living body. Reproduction is closely related. It is the living thing's way of participating in the eternal. Individual organisms die, but the species continues through reproduction. Even the humblest plant, in reproducing, imitates the eternal in the only way it can, by producing another of its kind. What is it to perceive? Aristotle's answer is astonishingly modern. Sensation is the reception of form without matter. When you see a red apple, your eye receives the form of redness without receiving the apple's matter. The sense organ becomes like the object perceived, but only in form, not in matter. The eye does not turn red. The ear does not vibrate with sound. They take on the form of the perceived quality while remaining materially unchanged. This is what distinguishes perception from merely being physically affected. Each sense has its own proper object. Sight perceives color, hearing perceives sound. Smell perceives odor, taste perceives flavor. Touch perceives qualities like hot and cold, wet and dry, hard and soft. Each sense is infallible about its proper object. Sight cannot be wrong about whether something is colored, though it can be wrong about what the colored thing is. The senses are like transparent media through which form passes from object to perceiver. But who perceives that they are perceiving? If sight sees and hearing hears, what is aware that the white thing and the sweet thing are the same sugar cube? There must be a unifying capacity that coordinates the deliverances of the individual senses. Aristotle calls this the common sense, koine aesthesis. It perceives common sensibles like motion, rest, number, shape, and magnitude, which no single sense grasps alone. It is also the faculty by which we are conscious of our own perceiving. Between perception and thought lies imagination, phantasia. Imagination is the power to produce images in the absence of perception. When you close your eyes and picture a sunset, you are exercising imagination. It is not the same as perception. We can imagine at will and our images can be false. It is not the same as thought. Animals have imagination but not reason. Imagination provides thought with its raw material. We cannot think without images, Aristotle insists. Every thought requires a phantasm, a mental image, as its vehicle. What makes animals move? Not thought alone. Theoretical knowledge does not produce action. Not desire alone. Desire without judgment is blind. It is the combination of desire and practical thought that produces locomotion. The animal perceives something as good or bad and moves toward or away from it. Desire provides the motivation. Practical thought provides the direction. This insight anticipates the modern distinction between motivation and cognition in psychology. Now Aristotle reaches the most difficult and controversial part of De Anima. The intellect nous is unlike any other capacity of the soul. While the senses require bodily organs, the intellect has no bodily organ. It must be unmixed with the body because it can think all things, and if it were mixed with matter, the matter would obstruct its reception of forms. The intellect is potentially all things, as a blank tablet is potentially any text. When it thinks, it becomes identical with the object of thought. This is a staggering claim. In the act of knowing, the mind and its object are one and the same. Here lies the most debated passage in the history of philosophy. Aristotle distinguishes two aspects of intellect. One is passive, it can become all things. The other is active, it makes all things thinkable, as light makes colors visible. This active intellect is separable, impassible, and unmixed. It is actual knowledge, which is prior to potential knowledge. And then Aristotle says something breathtaking. This intellect alone is immortal and eternal. When it is separated, it is just what it is, and this alone is immortal and eternal. But what is this agent intellect? Is it the individual mind, a cosmic mind, God? Aristotle does not say, and the silence launched centuries of debate. If the passive intellect depends on phantasms, mental images, which depend on sensation, which depends on the body, then the intellect is not entirely separable from the body during life. We think only with the help of our embodied imagination. This creates a profound tension. The agent intellect is separable and immortal, but actual thinking requires the body. Without the body, what remains of the mind? Memory and love perish with the body, Aristotle says. What survives is pure thought, impersonal, without memory, without individuality. In the act of thinking simple essences, what something is, the intellect cannot err. Just as sight is infallible about color, the intellect is infallible about essences. Error enters only in composition and division, when we assert that something is or is not the case. Judgment can be true or false, simple apprehension cannot. This doctrine of intellectual infallibility at the level of essence shaped the entire Western epistemological tradition, from Aquinas through Descartes. Thomas Aquinas wrote one of his most important commentaries on De Anima, and the stakes were enormous. If the agent intellect is impersonal, as Averroes argued, a single cosmic mind shared by all humans, then there is no individual immortality, no personal survival after death, and no basis for individual moral judgment. Aquinas insisted against Averroes that each human being has their own agent intellect. He used Aristotle's hylomorphic framework to defend the Christian doctrine of bodily resurrection. Because the soul is the form of the body, the separated soul after death is incomplete and naturally desires reunion with the body. The resurrection is not an arbitrary miracle, but the fulfillment of the soul's own nature. The battle over Aristotle's intellect divided medieval philosophy. Averroes, the great Islamic commentator, argued that there is one agent intellect for all humanity. Individual humans merely participate in universal thought. Siger of Brabant brought this position to the University of Paris. Aquinas wrote De Unitate Intellectus specifically to refute it, arguing that Averroes had misread Aristotle. The Bishop of Paris condemned Averroism in 1270 and 1277. The question, does each person truly think their own thoughts, was not merely academic. It determined the meaning of human individuality itself. Augustine of Hippo took a profoundly different path from Aristotle on the soul. Following Plato rather than Aristotle, Augustine maintained that the soul is an immaterial substance capable of existing without the body. The soul does not merely enliven the body, it uses the body as an instrument. Augustine's dualism shaped early Christian anthropology and remains influential in popular Christian understanding. Aquinas' adoption of Aristotle's hylomorphism against Augustinian dualism was one of the most consequential intellectual pivots in Christian history. De Anima is the founding text of the philosophy of mind. Its questions, what is consciousness? How does perception work? What is the relationship between mind and body? How can a material being think immaterial thoughts? Are the same questions that neuroscience, cognitive science, and philosophy of mind grapple with today. Aristotle's hylomorphic answer, that the soul is not a ghost in a machine, but the organized activity of a living body, has been rediscovered by contemporary philosophers seeking an alternative to both dualism and reductive materialism. The debate Aristotle started in De Anima is still, after 24 centuries, unfinished.